Oskar Schindler was a German industrialist and a member of the Nazi Party credited with saving the lives of nearly 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust. He accomplished this by employing them in his factories in occupied Poland and Czechoslovakia. Initially motivated by profit, he eventually spent his entire fortune and risked his life to protect his Jewish workers. After the war, his business ventures failed, and he lived in relative obscurity, supported by Jewish organizations. Schindler died of liver failure on October 9, 1974, in Hildesheim, West Germany. At the age of 60-6. It was Oskar Schindler's final wish to be buried in Jerusalem, a testament to his deep bond with the people he saved. In a remarkable gesture, his body was transported to Israel for burial. He is interred in the Mount Zion Catholic Cemetery in Jerusalem. As a member of the Nazi Party, he is the only person with that affiliation to be honored with burial on Mount Zion. His grave is a powerful and frequently visited sight. It is not adorned with flowers, but with stones. In Jewish tradition, visitors place small stones on a gravesite as a sign of respect and remembrance. Oskar Schindler's grave is covered in these stones, left by the survivors he saved, their descendants, and countless others who come to pay homage to a complex man who chose compassion in a time of hatred. Helen Keller was an extraordinary author and activist who, despite being left blind and deaf from an illness in infancy, they became one of the 20th century's leading humanitarians. With the help of her teacher, Anne Sullivan, she learned to communicate, graduated from Radcliffe College, and inspired millions with her perseverance. She spent her life advocating for the rights of people with disabilities and other progressive causes. She lived a long and impactful life, passing away in her sleep just shy of her 88th birthday, at her home in Easton, Connecticut. Following her death, Helen Keller's body was cremated. Her ashes were placed in the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., according to her wishes. She wanted to be interred alongside the two women most instrumental in her life, her beloved teacher, Anne Sullivan Macy, and Anne's successor, Polly Thompson. Her ashes rest in a columbarium within the cathedral's St. Joseph's Chapel. The niche is marked by a simple bronze plaque with an inscription also rendered in Braille, which reads, "Helen Keller and her beloved companion, Anne Sullivan Macy, are interred in the columbarium behind this chapel." Her final resting place is a quiet tribute, a place of honor symbolizing her profound connection to the companions who helped her break through silence and darkness to share. Eddie was a legendary Pakistani philanthropist and humanitarian, often called the father of the nation for his tireless service to the poorest. Born in British India, he founded the Eddie Foundation in 1951, which grew into the world's largest volunteer ambulance network, providing free healthcare, orphanages, shelters for the homeless, and burial services for the unclaimed dead. With his wife Bilki, he personally washed and prepared thousands of bodies for burial, embodying selfless compassion in a nation plagued by poverty and conflict. His ascetic life and interfaith approach inspired millions, earning him the title Pakistan's Mother Teresa. In his final years, Eddie battled kidney failure and other ailments, undergoing dialysis for over a decade. He passed away peacefully on July 8, 2016, at the age of 88 in a Karachi hospital, surrounded by family and supporters. His death prompted an outpouring of national grief, with Pakistan declaring a day of mourning. A massive funeral procession, attended by hundreds of thousands, wound through Karachi streets, featuring prayers at the National Stadium and a gun salute by the army. Following Islamic tradition, his body was buried the same day in the serene grounds of Eddie Village, a welfare community he established in 1991 on the outskirts of Karachi. His grave is simple and unadorned, marked by a modest headstone in accordance with his humble ethos. It lies amid the trees and pathways where he envisioned a haven for the vulnerable, a poignant final resting place that continues to draw pilgrims, honoring a man whose life's work turned despair into dignity. Emily Schindler was an integral, though often overlooked, partner in the heroic efforts to save Jewish workers during the Holocaust. Working alongside her husband Oskar, she played a crucial role in caring for the workers, often securing food and medicine on the black market. In one famous instance, she single-handedly nursed a transport of emaciated Jewish prisoners back to health in the winter of 19. After the war, the Schindlers lived in Argentina, but Oskar left her in 19. Emily lived the rest of her life in Argentina, often in poverty and with little recognition for her wartime bravery. In her later years, she began to receive more public acknowledgement. In July of 2001, at the age of 93, Emily Schindler traveled to Germany to visit her homeland. In failing health, she had expressed a wish to spend her final years there. Tragically, she died in a Berlin hospital on October 5, 2001, just months after her arrival. She had suffered a stroke. Her death marked the end of a long life defined by both extraordinary courage and profound personal hardship. Emily Schindler was buried in a cemetery in Waldkraiburg, a town in Bavaria. Her grave is marked with a simple headstone, a modest final resting place that stands in quiet contrast to the celebrated Jerusalem grave of the husband with whom she shared a complicated, but undeniably heroic legacy. Albert Schweitzer was a remarkable theologian, organist, philosopher, and physician. At the age of 30, already renowned in multiple fields, he pursued a medical degree to serve humanity directly. In 1913, he and his wife, Helene, founded the Albert Schweitzer Hospital in Lambaréné, in what is now Gabon, Central Africa. He dedicated his life to this hospital, developing the philosophy of reverence for life, an ethical principle demanding respect for all living things. For his selfless work, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1952. Schweitzer continued to work at his hospital well into his 90s. He died there on September 4, 1965, at the age of 90. His death was a peaceful one, occurring in the community he had built and served for over 50 years. In accordance with his wishes, he was given a simple burial on the grounds of the hospital. His grave is located on the riverbank, next to that of his wife Helene. A simple, handmade wooden cross marks the spot. It is an unpretentious and humble final resting place, perfectly reflecting the man's philosophy of simplicity and service. The hospital continues to operate, and his grave remains a site of pilgrimage for those inspired by his profound legacy of compassion and reverence for all life. Harvey Milk was a visionary, the politician and a pioneering leader of the gay rights movement. In 1977, he became one of the first openly gay elected officials in the United States on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. He championed LGBTQ+ rights, sponsoring a bill that banned discrimination based on sexual orientation. His charismatic and hopeful message resonated far beyond San Francisco, making him a national icon. Tragically, on November 27, 1978, after only 11 months in office, Harvey Milk and Mayor George Moscone were assassinated inside San Francisco City Hall by Dan White, a former city supervisor. The assassinations sent shockwaves of grief and anger through the city. Following his murder, Harvey Milk's body was cremated. He had been specific in his final wishes, which were recorded on tape. He did not want a somber burial. Instead, he wanted his ashes scattered in meaningful locations. His ashes were mixed with those of his partner, Scott Smith, who died in 19. A portion was scattered into the San Francisco Bay, another portion in the Pacific Ocean, and the remainder was encapsulated into a memorial at the corner of Castro and Market Streets. Harvey Milk's final resting place is not a single location but is diffused across the city he served, a symbolic dispersal that mirrors the wide-reaching and enduring impact of his life and legacy. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister and the most visible leader in the American civil rights movement. Through his activism and inspirational speeches, he advanced civil rights using nonviolence and civil disobedience. He led pivotal events like the Montgomery bus boycott and the 1963 March on Washington, where he delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. His efforts were instrumental in the passage of landmark civil rights legislation, and in 1964, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. On April 4, 1968, Dr. King was in Memphis, Tennessee, to support a sanitation workers' strike. While standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, he was assassinated by James Earl Ray at just 39 years old. His death sparked riots and global grief. Initially, Dr. King was buried in a local Atlanta cemetery. However, in 1977, his remains were moved to a new tomb on the grounds of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change in Atlanta. His crypt sits in the middle of a reflecting pool, inscribed with the words, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last." An eternal flame burns nearby, symbolizing the continuing effort to realize his dream of a world defined by justice and peace. Desmond Tutu was a South African Anglican bishop known for his work as an anti-apartheid and human rights activist. With his infectious laugh and unwavering moral courage, he became the conscience of South Africa. He advocated for nonviolent resistance, coining the term Rainbow Nation to describe his vision for a post-apartheid society. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 19. After the fall of apartheid, he chaired the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a groundbreaking process designed to heal the country. Tutu battled prostate cancer for many years, passing away peacefully in Cape Town on December 26, 2021, at the age of 90. True to his lifelong commitment to humility and environmental stewardship, he planned a modest funeral. He chose aquamation over traditional burial or cremation. Aquamation, or alkaline hydrolysis, is a water-based process considered more environmentally friendly. Following his state funeral at St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, where he had served as Archbishop, his remains underwent this process. His ashes were then interred in a simple wooden box behind the pulpit of the cathedral. It is a quiet, humble resting place inside the sacred space from which his powerful voice once echoed, calling for justice and reconciliation. Mahatma Gandhi was the primary leader of India's independence movement and the architect of non-violent civil disobedience that influenced the world. Through campaigns of peaceful protests, boycotts, and hunger strikes, he led India to independence from British rule. His philosophy of satyagraha, or truth force, was rooted in nonviolence and simple living. He became a global symbol of peace and freedom, inspiring civil rights movements across the continents. Tragically, just months after India achieved independence, Gandhi's life was cut short. On January 30, 1948, He was assassinated in New Delhi by a Hindu nationalist. Gandhi was 78 years old. His death sent a shockwave of sorrow across the world. Following Hindu tradition, his body was cremated the next day on the banks of the Yamuna River. The site of his cremation is now a memorial known as Raj Ghat. It features a simple black marble platform, inscribed with his last words, Her Rmo God, with an eternal flame burning at one end. Raj Ghat is an open-air memorial and a place of national pilgrimage. While this is his primary memorial, Gandhi's ashes were divided and sent to various parts of India to be scattered in major rivers, becoming part of the land he so dearly loved. Mother Teresa, born on Gezu, Gongsiboy, was a Roman Catholic nun who dedicated her life to serving the poorest of the poor. In 1950, she founded the Missionaries of Charity in Calcutta, India. The order grew to include thousands of members serving in hospices, homes for people with serious illnesses, soup kitchens, and orphanages. She became a global icon of selfless compassion, and her work was recognized with the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970-9. Despite her global fame, she lived a life of extreme simplicity. In her later years, her health began to fail. Mother Teresa died of heart failure in Calcutta, now Kolkata, at the age of 80. The Indian government granted her a full state funeral, an honor usually reserved for heads of state. Her funeral procession moved through streets lined with hundreds of thousands of mourners. Her body was laid to rest in a tomb on the ground floor of the Mother House, the headquarters of the Missionaries of Charity. The tomb is a simple, white marble structure, inscribed with the words, Love one another as I have loved you. It has become a major site of pilgrimage, where people of all faiths come to pray and pay their respects. John F. Kennedy, the 35th U.S. President, embodied the energy and optimism of a new generation. During his brief presidency, he confronted the Cold War's most perilous moments, launched the Peace Corps, and set the ambitious goal of landing a man on the moon. He inspired millions with his call to public service, famously urging Americans to ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. His presidency, often called Camelot, represented a moment of great hope and possibility. This promise was shattered on November 1963, when President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. His death at age 46 was a profound national trauma. Following a solemn state funeral watched by a grieving world, Kennedy was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. The site, on a slope with a view of Washington, D.C., was chosen by his widow, Jacqueline Kennedy. At the head of the grave, she requested an eternal flame be placed as a symbol of his enduring legacy. Kennedy's grave is flanked by the graves of his wife and 2 of their children who died in infancy. The site is one of the most visited grave sites in the world, a place of pilgrimage where millions reflect on the life and premature death of a leader who inspired a generation. Florence Nightingale was a social reformer and the founder of modern nursing. She became an icon after leading a team of nurses to care for soldiers during the Crimean War. She worked tirelessly to improve sanitation, dramatically reducing the death rate. Her dedication earned her the nickname the Lady with the Lamp for making rounds at night. After the war, she established the first secular nursing school in the world and became a leading advocate for public health reform, laying the foundation for professional nursing. Despite her fame, Nightingale was a deeply private person. She lived to the age of 90, passing away peacefully in her sleep at her London home on August 13, 1910. In recognition of her service, she was offered a national funeral and burial in Westminster Abbey, a high honor. However, true to her modest nature, she had stipulated in her will that she wanted a quiet, private service. Her family honored her wishes and declined the state burial. Instead, Florence Nightingale was laid to rest in the graveyard of St. Margaret's Church in East Wellow, Hampshire, in her family's plot. Her grave is marked by a simple cross with the inscription, FN, born the 12th of May 1820, died the 13th of August 1910. It is a testament to a woman of monumental global impact who chose an understated and humble final resting place. Eleanor Roosevelt, the longest-serving First Lady of the United States, was a formidable humanitarian and activist. She redefined her role, using her position to champion civil rights, women's rights, and human rights for all. After her husband, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, died in 1945, she became even more active on the world stage. She served as a delegate to the United Nations General Assembly and was instrumental in drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, earning the nickname First Lady of the World. In her later years, Eleanor Roosevelt suffered from several illnesses, eventually being diagnosed with aplastic anemia and bone marrow tuberculosis. She faced her final illness with characteristic courage, passing away at her Manhattan home on November 7, 1962, at the age of 7. A public funeral service was held in Hyde Park, New York, attended by numerous world leaders. She was buried next to her husband, Franklin, in the Rose Garden at Springwood, their family estate in Hyde Park. The site is marked by a simple white marble monument inscribed with both of their names and life dates. Her grave lies in the heart of the home she loved, a serene setting that now serves as a National Historic Site where the public can pay respects to one of America's most influential humanitarians, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th U.S. President. guided the nation through the Civil War, preserving the Union and abolishing slavery. His leadership fundamentally reshaped the nation, but he would not live to see the Reconstruction era he envisioned. On the evening of April 14, 1865, just 5 days after the main Confederate surrender, Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. He died the following morning, on April 15th. Becoming the first American president to be assassinated, the nation was plunged into a profound state of mourning. A funeral train carried his coffin on a nearly 1,700-mile journey to his home state of Illinois. With millions of Americans lining the tracks to pay their respects, he was finally interred on May 4, 1865, at Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, Illinois. His final resting place is the Lincoln Tomb, an impressive granite monument. Due to multiple attempts to steal his body, his coffin was encased in a thick block of concrete and reinterred in a steel-reinforced vault beneath the chamber floor in 1901. The tomb, a National Historic Landmark, is a grand and solemn tribute to the president who gave what he called the last full measure of devotion to his country. Nelson Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary who served as the first president of a democratic South Africa after spending 27 years in prison for fighting the racist system of apartheid. He emerged with a message of reconciliation and forgiveness. He led his country through a difficult transition, dismantling the legacy of apartheid and fostering racial harmony. For his monumental efforts, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990, becoming a global symbol of peace and resilience. In his later years, Mandela retired from public life, and his health declined due to a prolonged respiratory infection. He passed away peacefully at his home in Johannesburg on December 5, 2013. His death prompted a global outpouring of grief. South Africa observed a 10-day period of national mourning, including a massive public memorial. Following the state funeral, Nelson Mandela was buried in his ancestral home and childhood village of Kunu. The burial was a private ceremony, incorporating traditional Xhosa customs. His grave is in a family plot, marked by a simple carved stone that includes his name and clan name, Madiba. The site overlooks the rolling hills where he herded cattle as a boy, a peaceful and deeply personal final resting place for a man who belonged to the world. Diana, Princess of Wales, was one of the most beloved figures of the late 20th century. She used her immense platform to champion humanitarian causes, most notably her work with AIDS patients and her campaign to ban landmines. She had a rare ability to connect with ordinary people, breaking down royal protocol to offer comfort to the sick and marginalized. Her empathy and hands-on approach to charity work revolutionized the public perception of the monarchy and made her an international icon known as the People's Princess. Her life was cut tragically when she died in a car crash in Paris. The news triggered an unprecedented wave of public mourning worldwide. Her televised funeral at Westminster Abbey was watched by an estimated 2.5 billion people. Initially, a burial in the Spencer family vault was planned, but due to concerns about public privacy, the plan was changed. Instead, Princess Diana was laid to rest on a secluded island in the middle of a lake on the grounds of her family's ancestral estate. Althorpe Park, a simple white memorial temple, stands on the shore overlooking the island, providing a serene and private place for her family and the world to remember her. Muhammad Ali was more than a legendary heavyweight boxing champion. He was a global icon of courage and conviction. Famed for his skill in the ring, he declared himself the greatest. His greatest battles, however, were fought outside of it. In 1967, he refused to be drafted into the U.S. military to fight in Vietnam, citing his religious beliefs. This act of conscience cost him his title but made him a powerful voice for civil rights. He was a poet, a performer, and a fearless humanitarian who transcended sport. In his later life, Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's syndrome. Despite the disease's debilitating effects, he remained a beloved public figure. On June 3, 2016, Muhammad Ali died in a hospital from septic shock at 74 years old. His funeral, planned by Ali himself, was a 2-day event in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. It included a traditional Islamic prayer service and a public funeral procession that allowed thousands of fans to pay their respects. He was buried in Louisville's historic Cave Hill Cemetery. His grave is marked by a simple, modest granite headstone inscribed with just his name, Ali. In accordance with Islamic tradition, it is a humble marker for a man whose personality and impact were larger than life. Paul Newman was a celebrated actor renowned for his charismatic screen presence. Behind the Hollywood stardom was a man of deep integrity and quiet philanthropy. In 1982, he co-founded the food company Newman's Own, starting with his homemade salad dressing. Newman decided from the beginning that 100% of the company's after-tax profits would be donated to charity. This idea grew into a philanthropic powerhouse, donating hundreds of millions of dollars to causes like the hole-in-the-wall gang camps for seriously ill children. Newman was a famously private individual who preferred a quiet life in Connecticut. In 2008, it was reported that he had been diagnosed with lung cancer. He faced his illness with a characteristic lack of fuss, choosing to spend his final weeks at home surrounded by his family. He died on September 26, 2008, at the age of 80. In keeping with his intensely private nature, his final arrangements were simple and discreet. Following a private service, Paul Newman's body was cremated, and his ashes were given to his family. There is no public grave or memorial site. This absence of a public marker is a fitting final testament to a man who, despite his worldwide fame, valued substance over style and selfless giving over personal recognition.